Category is disturbing, uncomfortable, bleak, and the like. Share your selections in the comments and let me know if you've read any of the ones that I've picked. First up is The Space Merchants by Frederick Pohl and C.M. Kornbluth, published in 1952. Add this one to your list if you're craving the same reading mood of a Fahrenheit 451, Brave New World, or 1984. This can go on the same dystopian shelf. The corporate dominant consumerist world is enough to add this onto the disturbing science fiction list. This is a future Earth where advertising companies run everything. The President of the United States makes a cameo, but he's basically an unrecognizable nobody. That should give you an idea of the state of things. Amping up the disturb factor is the deception and trouble that befalls the protagonist, and the odds stacked against him challenges that he must overcome to get his life, or any sense of any kind of life, back. He was an ad executive on the fast track to make it to the top until everything came crashing down around him. Most disturbing, though, is the source of protein that we consume in this future world, a resource known simply as Chicken Little. And that's all that I'm going to say for now. 1984 by George Orwell, published in 1949. I think every generation since the 50s has claimed this story as a warning of an overactive police state becoming realized, the government intrusion into our privacy, even at the level of our own thoughts, ranks this book off of the charts on our Disturbometer. In 1984, Big Brother, the government, the party is watching. The party is watching everything and everywhere. If the party deems a fact not a fact, you must believe it. It's no longer a fact. If you don't, you will suffer the consequences. These consequences may include a date with hungry rodents. How about False Dawn by Chelsea Quinn Yarbo? Murder and violent sexual assault make this an uncomfortable read. Society, the world, has basically devolved into gang warfare, with pirates and religious extremists providing most of the villainous elements. This is post-apocalyptic Earth, and Yarbo excels at producing a mood of bleakness and helplessness. I'm not gonna lie, it's a depressing read, and some parts are downright horrific. It's on this list not so much as a recommendation, but because it meets the disturbing books criteria. If you're up for a trek through this darkness, there is a strong story here about two people who are in a terrible situation, crossing dangerous terrain, confronted with awful conflict, and must somehow survive. Yarbo doesn't pull punches and doesn't shy away from making difficult choices for her characters' destinies. Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Hyperion follows 7 travelers on a pilgrimage to the distant and unusual planet Hyperion. Each character has a slow-to-be-revealed connection to the blade-covered creature, the Shrike, who's known to inhabit or appear in the area of Hyperion's time tombs. Surrounded by an entropy field, the tombs are moving backwards through time. The Shrike, who can manipulate or navigate time and space, is a pretty frightening and gruesome villain. Shrike plus blades plus the pilgrims equals many disturbing moments. The pilgrims include a scholar, a private eye, a soldier, and others. Most haunting in the story is the priest's tale. The agony, despair, confusion, and torture that we witness the priest experience on Hyperion has the potential to haunt you long after the read. Stand on Zanzibar by John Bruner. The only thing that should be surprising about Bruner being on this list is that I only have him on here once. I recently talked about his brilliant The Sheep Look Up on another video, and I decided to highlight Zanzibar here instead, since I already talked about that one. This was dismal and disturbing. Clearly, we paid no attention to Bruner in 1968 as much of this dystopian world resembles our own today. Bruner imagined in the not-too-far future overpopulation and poverty at catastrophic levels. To pick one darkest element to the story is probably impossible, but candidates for sure are the murderous muckers conducting their version of the purge, the presence of our corporate overlords running everything, considerations and treatment of the third world, disparity between the haves and the have-nots, and social engineering. Starfish by Peter Watts. I've always been terrified by the idea of floating in a giant deep ocean, not your natural habitat, and having an ungodly-sized creature swim by. I'm pretty sure that that fear isn't unique to me, and I think if the idea makes you queasy, you're gonna experience Peter Watts' Starfish the same way that I did. That's the easy part. Starfish is an edgy, trippy, psychological thriller. Where it goes into the deep end, pun intended, are the very damaged and disturbed cast of characters. The central setting is a geothermal energy plant in the vicinity of a geothermal vent at the bottom of the ocean. If the claustrophobia of this deep, dark world isn't enough to make your skin tingle, probably the characters will. The recruited crew of misfits, and calling them misfits is being kind, are bioadapted or enhanced to enable them to operate in this extreme pressure and unbreathable environment. Cyber enhancements include voice modulators, vision adapters, neural inhibitors, and more. Given the extreme work conditions, it's going to be those who have some sort of checkered past and some screws loosed that the mega corporation sends on this gig. Following some of these deviants, another understatement, is at times a disturbing experience. Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein. It's always tricky to include this novel on a compilation list because these, to some degree, are meant to be reading recommendations as well. Stranger is a book that I can both pan and celebrate. I did both in my review of the book last year. I panned it for the too obvious author voice, overwhelming one of the main characters and thus the story. I celebrated it because Heinlein is an undeniably talented author, and despite what I found to be the failures of the work, he still accomplishes a brilliant story. Most disturbing in the story is the feeling that main character Jubal Harshaw is presented as a brilliant, always correct, always justified in his actions genius. It's low-hanging fruit at this point to call out the misogyny present in a lot of classic science fiction. Where it becomes irritating and Stranger is Jubal's relationship with his secretaries and the blurring of lines between his status as employer, father figure, and sort of creeper. In one instance, we get his inner thoughts about how he feels he could share a bed with Jill and it's not sexual. They're just both tired and there happens to be a bed. While in another moment, we're privy to his thoughts about her ample bosoms and her curves. There are a lot of ways in which Heinlein is forward thinking when it comes to sexuality in this book, but where it fails for me is this feeling that I can't shake, that it's important for Heinlein to justify to me, through Jubal, how certain parts of his relationship with women who work for him is not as inappropriate as I may think. On the tip of my tongue, I've got about 30 more novels that could easily qualify for this list, starting with The Star's My Destination. Let me know in the comments what's on your list, and let's see if we have any matches. Thank you for watching. I'm Michael Leverts, and this is Fit to be Read.